Welcome back. For those who've been in this session before, if you've not, this is the Total Agility track. I'm Dermot McCauley chairing this track from the Product Marketing Group. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage for what is going to be a great story. I'm going to go and grab people from outside. I can't believe they're not crowding the doors. I'll leave the participants to tell you the story, but I've seen it already, so I know it's good. I'd like to introduce firstly John Schroeder, Chief Information Officer of Pet Partners, who's going to initiate and lead the session, and with him Kris Subrmaniam, who is a principal at Optima Global Solutions, who has worked closely with John and Pet Partners to bring some added value and then to help implement the solution. So thanks for joining, and over to you, John.
Thanks, Dermot. So the few, the proud, I think ice cream and late in the day went out. So we'll talk a bit about Pet Partners. This just is a quick outline of what we're going to cover. What we were looking for in terms of requirements, how we went about building the case for it and the selection, and then Kris will walk us through the implementation, and we can talk a bit about what's next. So we don't have a big crowd, but I'd love to make it a bit more interactive at the end, so I'll try to get through the presentation bit of it relatively quickly. So a bit about me. I've been at Pet Partners now for since May of 2015, so maybe 9 months. And I was actually the first IT employee at headquarters. So Pet Partners acquires and manages veterinary clinics. We have about 60. We're part of the Mars family of companies, and you might be interested to know that Mars's pet care division is actually larger than their candy division. So if you like M&Ms, it's the same company. And we historically outsourced all of our IT to 3 or 4 different companies. And that worked fabulously well when we were 5, okay when we were 10 or 15, and really started to break when we hit 40. And toward the end of last year, we started acquiring clinics at the rate of 1 a week. So if you project that out, we're growing pretty rapidly. And the challenge now is to figure out how to not just do 1 a week, but 2, perhaps even 3 a week, because we have the pipeline for it. So I'll let Kris introduce himself as well, and then we can move on to the presentation.
Thanks, John. My name is Kris Subrmaniam from Optima Global Solutions. I am the Solutions Architect and Practice Director for the Smart Process Application and overall BPM, Business Process Management Strategies.
So we talked a bit about this. Post-acquisition, we take over IT, finance, and HR. And we like to think we let the veterinarians do what they like to do best and why they became veterinarians, which is treat sick animals, and not so much about the HR and finance bits. Of course, we also provide a bunch of training to them, helping them to run their business better. So we don't walk in with sort of day one, here's the new rule book, here's your uniform, and do you have any questions? It's very much about local control. In fact, we don't even brand the practices that we acquire. And that is an important part to why Total Agility was a great fit for us. And we were really looking for scalable infrastructure. There's been a lot of discussion about Total Agility as a platform, and that was absolutely something we were looking for. So process automation. The reason we started with AP automation, we needed a beachhead. There had been, so one of the first things I did when I took over, I went back and looked at all the past projects, and we had about 6 of them, and the number of software implementations that were still in production was exactly 0. So we needed a win, and there was a lot of discussion about where should we start, and so it became very critical that we have a solid platform that was battle tested, that would go in easily, and would get us a win. And of course, we're already looking for some follow-on automation. So again, these were the project goals. This is very much around proving that we, as the new IT department, can execute. And I think that as you read these goals, it's a very good fit with what Kofax and Total Agility can do. So existing processes, I don't think anybody's said this ever, but that's the world we lived in, right? So if you're at a practice, we ask you to take all the invoices that you get, because we still let the practices order. They typically still dial up on the phone or go log on to the website, place the orders, get it, circle all the things that have been received correctly, and then they scan and send the invoice to us as one giant PDF twice a week. And so on the back end, accounts payable would take those PDFs, split it up, type in the name, save it to a drive, and they'd fire up our ERP client, which is Microsoft Dynamics, that client, they'd sit there and enter the data. It was massively labor intensive. And we do 4,000 or 5,000, at the time, about 4,000 or 5,000 invoices a month. So we wanted to get them out of that. And so this is a bit about our accounts payable practice. We've got lots of different database instances in Microsoft Dynamics there at the top. I know this is a bit hard to read, but the long and the short of it is it's a completely manual process end to end. And another reason we started with accounts payable is it's very similar. Everybody gets invoices, everybody pays them. So it wasn't an industry-specific piece for us. And the first thing we did was actually create the ROI case for it. So usually not what happens in the IT department. You're out with architecture and APIs and trying to figure out how this is all going to fit in. And we started with the ROI because we had so many roadkill projects and said, what are the drivers of this, right? So we had a pretty simple financial model that we worked with the CFO to put together. And that told us a couple of things in a hurry. And we're fortunate because we're growing so rapidly that we can make the case about avoiding hires rather than downsizing, which is nice, right? So we have an accounting department. We had about 8 people typing in invoices every day. And as we look to double or triple, what we didn't want to have to do is acquire a new high-rise building to house all of our accounting staff. So what that told us in a hurry is the sensitivity is all about avoiding accountants doing data entry. We didn't need to bring in any of the HR or other places we could take TotalAgility. We didn't need to worry about we think we can go from 20% of an approver's time to 10%. So it became very simple, which is great. You take it to the board and you say, we're going to hire a third of the accountants we thought we were going to hire. Quick payback. So there was some discussion in one of the other presentations about RFPs versus proof of concepts versus sort of winging it. And we were, I would say, in between. So we tried to keep it simple. We did have a project steering committee with finance, operations, and IT. We had a list of must-haves and nice-to-haves, and we started there with a pretty big screen. And it was interesting because a lot of vendors out there that could do this come at it from a very different perspective. So everybody from Pega, I put in Pega previously, thought, oh, workflow, that'll be good. But they didn't really have the capture piece. And we had started with capture, and they might be missing the content management piece. Or the workflow piece was not really up to snuff, or they had a fat client, which we're trying to get away from. So we took that initial screen at 20 companies. We did a web demo and engaged with them about price, 8 of them. And then we had final presentations and demos. And the 2 finalists were Kofax and Optima and Highlands on Base with Continuum Systems. And they came at it from an ECM perspective. So what Optima presented to Pet Partners was just right place, right time. Kris has a framework that he dropped in for us that was built around physicians' endoscopies AP process. You know, and AP processes are all pretty similar, but this company, it looks exactly like us, except it's on the human side. So they acquire human endoscopy clinics. They've got an ERP system with individual databases for each company. So their largest supplier is Henry Schein, so is ours. So it was a very easy fit, and the conversation with their CIO was really enlightening, and we had the benefit, I think, of having them shake out and build a product that we got to leverage. So obviously, it integrates with SharePoint. We chose not to do that. We did integrate with 60 instances of SQL Server, which has worked out, I would say, surprisingly well.
Very well.
And for us, we went entirely thin client. And there was a bit of debate about performance. Our performance has been stellar. In fact, better than the Dynamics thick client. So I'll let Kris talk a bit about the existing framework and what drove that rewrite.
Yeah, so, The slide prior to that. So, as John mentioned, we wrote this framework for an organization called Physician Endoscopy. So at that time, that framework was built in KC Capture, KC and KTM 5.5, and TotalAgility 5.5. It worked really well, so we did all the capture, validation, all that in KTM, KC KTM. Once those invoices were validated and approved, validated and verified, we sort of export them using Kofax export connector to TotalAgility. And then the workflow started, and then the posting of the ERP invoices to the ERP system. So it has been working really well. And then of course, when TotalAgility KTS 7.1 came along, and I looked at all the features and I was very excited. Mainly the capture and the whole KC and KTM piece were now embedded within KTS 7.1. So obviously it was a very strong reason to rewrite the entire framework. So as you can see here, KTS 7 combines capture with workflow capabilities, a single point of reference to single point of reference to an invoice instance. So what that really means is that when we did the older platform from KC Capture and then to KTF 5.5, you had to export all the invoices over. So if there was any problems with an invoice in the workflow, to send it back to the validation was always very, very difficult. In fact, it was impossible. So this was really nice. So everything is very linear. You have validation, verification, approval, and then post to the ERP instantaneously. So that was really, really nice. So we can roll forward, roll back and forth. If there's any exceptions and so forth, for instance, after the invoice is validated, if the GL code is missing or not valid, or supply ID is not valid, we can always send that back to the validation activity. So that's what I mean by single point of reference. So it just works out really well. Obviously, no more exporting of invoices to the workflow. Fully browser-based. If you're familiar with KTF 5.5, the browser-based was just IE only. So now with KTS 7, any browser, iPads, iPhones, and so forth. Obviously KTS 7 has a very modern look and feel, and many new features that dramatically reduce development time. What we presented in Pet Partners was that, very similar in concept to what we presented with Physician Endoscopy. We, after the requirements gathering, we drew up a whole slew of process flow diagrams, and this is what your new system is going to look like. We presented to them, got an approval, and we started development. So we presented both solutions. What was implemented at Physician Endoscopy, which was KCKTM and KT 5.5. But moving, fast forward along, this is KT 7.2. So as you can see here, the UI is just, very modern, nice and fresh looking. I won't go through every detail of the system, but I'll highlight some of the important key components of this framework here. So you can see here, this is a work queue. This is a list of tasks for a user who logs in, things to do. In fact, what you're seeing here is a live screenshot of the invoices at Pet Partners. So you can see at the rightmost corner there, ingested date, when the invoice was ingested, what the ingestion type was. So obviously the three modes of ingestion: email, foldering, and regular scanning. I think I would say at this point, over 90% of ingestion method is to folders. So we have about over 70 folders in there. Invoices are read from any one of the locations around the country. Is that correct, John? Right? So they are read in and then put into the folder. And TotalAgility scans every 5 seconds. Is there any invoice to process? Reads them in, and then does all the ingestion, the capture, validation, and so forth. So you can see here, when it's a file import, what folder was put in. Each folder representing a location, around the country. And then all the other information on supply information, just to give you a snapshot view. And then below here, there's icons, the green, orange, and red. They're all the SLAs, service level agreements. So what that means is that whether or not your task is not due, or 50% due, or completely overdue. Overdue means it's red, right? So we have set an SLA to 2 days. And then on top there is a case help. So highlighting a row of a case tells you, where the status of an activity, whether or not it's overdue and how long it's been overdue, and who's been sitting on it. And then a little icon there shows the view process. The view process tells you where exactly the invoice instance is. So a vendor calls up saying, hey, I haven't received my payment in 2 months. Where is it? So you can actually highlight the row, click view process. You can see a process of where the invoice went, traveled through, and who's sitting on it, how long they've been sitting on it. When you take an activity that launches this, the invoice validation form. So as you can see here, we've got a very good throughput here, very good confidence level. The invoice number is highlighted in red, so what that means is that's a duplicate. But other than that, we've got pretty much 100% confidence level in this screenshotting here. So, you can see here the table information, which is a picture of the line items, the vendor information, and then a few things like the supplier search. So for instance, if the OCR did not pick up the correct supplier, you can click the thing and pick the correct supplier. The invoice line items. The GL posting is a very important component in that. So what that means is that besides validating your OCR data, it also allows you to enter your GL data instantaneously. So as we speak now, when the user is entering GL data, it's actually validating against any one of the 60 instances of the GP database in real time. So once the invoice is validated, it goes through what we call a validation. Really, it's a verification screen. It's an approval screen. One of the things what we did at Physician Endoscopy was that the rule there was that no scrolling, right? So if you want to be presented with an invoice, very little or no scrolling at all, because if you have large volumes of invoice coming in, you don't want to be scrolling back and forth, especially in table grids and so forth. So that's something that we've achieved. So as you can see here, this is like an approval screen. You present it with the supply information, the general ledger information, the invoice image is always to the right-hand side. And then you can see at the top here the notes. The notes actually tells you, right, who validated it, what time they validated it, and if there was any note. If there's any exceptions, all the exceptions are tracked there. And then all you see is approve, reject, cancel, right? That's all the approver sees. So approve takes you to forwards you to the next step in the process. Reject takes you back to where the process came back from. And again, this is a typical exception screen. So you can see here at the top the notes, all the notes in audit trail from the latest to the oldest, right? So the user who's processing the exception gets a good snapshot of why the exception happened, and then can make some intelligent decisions with all the buttons up there. Okay. And some analytics, obviously there's a lot more in terms of analytics, but just to give you a sample. So I think I'll let John take over this point here.
Sure. Thanks, Kris. So, why Kofax plus Optima? It was an easy decision for us in a lot of ways because we felt it was the most mature product and the strongest capture and workflow. We did look at Perceptive and liked their workflow. We just felt that Kofax was a bit more intuitive and a better fit for us. It was multi-channel out of the box, and yeah, we do get 90% of our invoices scanned in, but we still have to be able to take that's maybe by volume. But our largest supplier generates about 1/3 of our invoice volume, and that's file-based. They deliver it electronically, e-invoice us, and we get email and end-to-end. So the fact that we can handle everything through the same interface was critical. And the next point I think it was especially telling. When we were checking references for Highland, even just trying to understand the proposal they put together for us was a bit of a challenge. There were lots of optional parts that when you really dig under the covers weren't so optional. And Kofax, we found their licensing scheme to be very straightforward. We talked about browser base and being able to talk extensively with a CIO, my counterpart at a company that looked just like us, who has an implementation up and running in production, was very helpful. So we took a little bit of a different approach on the implementation. We were fortunate we had a very strong roadmap for what Physicians Endoscopy did. And the temptation, of course, is to do lots of planning. And I think everybody on the accounts payable side was very excited. We have a strong power user that drove a lot of the user acceptance testing, was very instrumental in designing the product. And what we tried to focus on is getting live as fast as we possibly could, with the minimum feature set to make it actually work and give us some benefit. And the reason we did that is I think where a lot of these projects go south, and where we've gone south before, is trying to anticipate everything, designing it, managing the project very tightly. You get up to the finish line, you're just about spent, you're just about out of time, and then you are. You've spent all the money, all the time, and you hand it to the user and say, here you go. And of course you got about half of it wrong. You say, well, you know, it's different than a whiteboard, so I don't really need this half of the functionality that we designed in. But I do need all this other stuff. But we're spent more out of time. So we really tried to take that minimum feature set. We went live, our first meeting was the end of September, and we went live 2 weeks ago. So pretty fast. And then what we're doing is every week we're meeting with the finance team, talking about, here are the things we implemented last week, how are those? Here's what's on the docket for this week. Has anything else come up that you want to add to the backlog? So we're really trying to cycle through that. And that's worked extremely well, because out of the gate, it didn't do everything they wanted to do. But now, over the next couple of weeks, our user group sees the developers and Kris's team being very responsive to them and knocking things down, and they think, wow, this product can do lots of things. And it can get better and better and better, and we get to shape what that looks like. So that was just very powerful. And the fact that you're not compiling code, and it's a traditional development cycle, but you're really going in and clicking boxes and scripting, I think just makes the development cycle very quick. We do have separate development and test environments, which I think is mandatory. On the integration side, again, it was tempting to, as an application developer, hey, there's an API, awesome. You know, we can integrate in real time, back and forth to Dynamics. And of course, that scares the living daylights out of the accountants. What do you mean? I'm gonna have to do journal entries. What if it's wrong? How do we go back? And looking at the API integration methods for Dynamics will give you a headache in a hurry. So what we decided to do instead was old-fashioned batch upload. We have a very simple VB program that lets someone in accounting go in and see visually all the things that are going to be loaded. There's a last check, and they hit post. And it's that simple. And that's working very well for us. And again, it was a drive to production and then enhance from there.
So this was our effort. So what we did was, voted on Mike. We went up there to Saratoga Springs, did a one-day requirements gathering at Pet Partners offsite. We did in a hotel. John brought the whole team over. We actually have a template, a spreadsheet, where we hand them out to the end users. And then end users fill out all the list of things that needs to be done. For instance, we have a set number of fields for invoice, set number of fields for purchase orders and so forth. The user fills in, do you want to see additional fields? What are the new things you'd like to see? Based on the spreadsheet, and then that's the one-day meeting. So everything that you see here is done in a very highly iterative, very intensive requirements gathering session. The goal here is that to implement your solution very, very quickly and effectively. The initial configuration was done on our server. So I think John was still waiting for the service to arrive. So we implemented that solution on our server, and the users were able to, remote in and do some level of testing. Obviously, we got some data from them, Pet Partners test data, namely vendor and general ledger information. And then when the development server came, we were able to install TotalAgility, all the transformation server, and all the components, including our solution. the very same day and have the solution up and running. And then again, one of the biggest things is no change in code to access database. I just want to stop here and read a little bit as far as TotalAgility is concerned. I've been with TotalAgility for over 5 years, started in version 3.6. I come from the BPM space, business process management space. One of the things that I always preach to my developers is that try and write no code or zero code at all. There's a tendency I've seen KTA developers and other BPM developers is to, oh, we can't do this, let's do JavaScript or C# code and all that. And I've seen it over and over again. What happens is that you hire a consultant, they come in, they do that. They leave, it becomes a maintenance nightmare. You have an activity that's written in C# code, Java's code. It really, really becomes a maintenance nightmare. And you know, when you move it over from development to test to production, it really, really becomes a thing. So, because I've been in this platform for so long, I know what the product can do, what it cannot do. So far, I have not found anything that KTA will not do. So all our implementations, it's all pure native KTA. No scripting, no JavaScript, no VB script. There's very little VB script we do. But we've been able to achieve quite a bit just with plain native KTA. So it's a very, very powerful platform. So, 60 instances of GP database in real time. And then we worked with the accounting team to enhance the UI. So one of the things that for every new installation that we have, we work with the team because everybody likes to have, new look and feel. And, we work with them. For instance, entering a GL data. One of the things they wanted was, besides bringing all the template information, to enter the GL code. If there's a template, it automatically brings in your chart of accounts there, fills in all the information for you. If not, you enter the GL code, and then you just tap, 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 and then it fills it all for you. You don't have to, so very little mouse click. You just use your fingers back and forth. You go through things very, very quickly. And then we had a daily, like John said, 30-minute meetings every day before the final go-live date. Just to check and balances, make sure everything is working right, and it's really worked extremely well. So when no structural change to optimized KTA framework, that's one of the things, the key things in our framework is that the whole thing is designed in such a way that you do not want to make any structural change. Just enhancements and new requirements on top of what we have. So the success factors, I know John alluded to the fact that, they wanted to get a quick buy-in very, very quickly. Myself, having been in the BPM space, one of the things I've learned is that I've seen a lot of BPM projects fail. Over 70% of the BPM projects fail. The reason is that they take too much, and they just can't complete it. The best way to do it is pick a process that's small, and then that's manageable, and then you get quick management buy-in. Really, really important. I've a lot of success in this area here. And then pick a process that has a large impact with a lot of visible benefits. And you have good ROI, and then of course it's connected to a strategic operational objective. And one of the things that John told me was that these are the things that we want to implement. Phase 1 is ingestion, validation, verification, approval, post to ERP system. We get that done, we'll get a good buy-in, and I think we have achieved that. So some of the success factors is obviously the multi-channel ingestion, email, foldering, scanning. And I must say that we have well over 80% confidence as far as OCR data is concerned. Prior to going live, we did train a whole bunch of invoices. They have a massive amount of vendor data, close to 16,000. It's not so much 16,000 vendors, but each vendor has multiple locations across the country. For instance, Henry Schein will have about 30, 40 locations around the country. So that each represents a vendor. So the system is actually looking at any of the vendor information in real time.
About the 80% confidence level. Veterinary medicine, some of the suppliers have resisted the temptation to modernize. So one of our largest food suppliers still gives us invoices on dot matrix, literally. Rip it off, peel it off, send it to us. This is a major company we've heard of. And we're still getting decent OCR results from that. So.
Batch posting to invoices GL. You hear things over and over again. We want to do a real-time posting. If you talk to the accountants, they're totally against that. The accountants are a very funny group of people. Before you post to the system, they want to see first. Tell me what I'm going to post before I send it to the system. When you enter GL data, posting real-time information and then having to reverse the transaction and all that, it's a real messy thing. So the batch posting works really well. If let's say for instance today, 70 invoices are approved, and then at the end of the day, the accountant goes in and looks at an accounting status screen. We present it with by period, and this other invoices are going to be posted. Invoice count, the invoice total amount, are you ready to post, and then post. And it creates all the batches within the ERP system. Very clean, nicely, it works really well. Obviously, the posting process, there's a lot of exception checking too. For instance, somebody deletes a vendor, somebody deletes the GL data, all the exceptions are created, and then sent it back to validation again. And then, of course, a slew of analytics, as you can see there.
I'll pick up next. So now that we've got it in and we've got some success, I think the management team is very excited about it. Certainly the accounting staff is excited about it. We're looking to centralize our largest vendors, so right now those invoices go to the practices. On paper, we're looking to get as many as we can electronically sent to headquarters, and then once we adjust them, we'll send an email out to the practice managers saying, this week you have 8 invoices to approve. They click, they can see the invoice, and it's very simple. Approve, reject, why. So we can also then give historical search to the practice managers, because right now they all have filing cabinets full of invoices. And so if they get an invoice this month that looks wrong, they're digging through paper, trying to figure out where was that other one, what did I pay last month? And that's no fun. So this way they have the same capabilities we do. They can go in for their practice, dial up search, figure out, all right, what did I pay last month? Yep, that's about right, approve. So that's a bit about phase 2 for accounts payable. Again, our goal is to be able to onboard practices quickly when we acquire them. And when we go to a new practice, that means converting everybody to our payroll system. And I think some of you may have seen the demo where you take a picture of a driver's license, populates the form, fabulous, right? Blow that right into our payroll system. We have to do doctor contracts, and of course the doctor has to be licensed. Can we prove every doctor out of our 700 or so have a valid license right now? Do we have the paperwork on that? Maybe, it's at the practices. Would I bet my paycheck that I can locate everyone? No, I would not. So again, when we sign a doctor contract with a practice we've acquired, using that sort of process to go out, automatically check the state's records. Yes, they have a valid license. It's current. Okay, great. Ready to go. Document collections, going out back and forth with contracts, e-signature. That's going to cycle this around much faster. And I think one of the presentations was asking about surprises. And it wasn't, we knew we were going to get better information, but how revealing that was to both us on the IT side and management, as well as for the accounting folks themselves, to get complete transparency. Because when we were scoping the project, we were trying to figure out how many invoices do we process. We couldn't answer that question. We had to go in and count in the folders, and it should be about, now we know. So in the first 2 days, we processed 1,110 invoices. And we know what the cycle time is, we know standard deviations, we know what the average is. And now and that lets us figure out, are we getting any better? Which is extremely important. HR processes as well. We have a lot of one-offs there. So we're going to try to use KTA as really our system of engagement. So every time that we're out with paper or we have a process, we'd like to get that into KTA. And I think that's going to work very well for us as we go forward.
Daniel, what's next for Optima? Approval by iPad, iPhone, HR onboarding, offboarding, expense tracking management, compliance management. So some of the list of things that we have on board here. So I think with that, leave it up to questions.
Yep, just one. said that you get a lot of your invoices are still paper and,
Yep.
and they're scanned in.
Yep.
So what exact scanners do you use? Are they ISIS scanners? Are they...
All over the map. Every practice has a scanner, and it's likely to be a Canon or Xerox, but not necessarily.
Okay, and the new scan web client integrates beautifully with that.
Fabulous. It doesn't, we haven't seen any effect on OCR based on the scanner. Except they got a really high-end brand spanking new Xerox. Yeah, it separates the same as a $200 feature.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions from the group? All right, thank you. Jeremy, did you have anything to add in addition to this?
No, I just wanted to thank John and Kris. That's a fabulous story of fast innovation and great to hear. Thanks very much for coming and sharing it with us. Thank you.
Thanks.